you guys? This is Good Deeds, and I'm Dr. Renee Sunday. We're live. We're in Dallas, Texas. Yes, Dallas, Texas. We're here with Bishop T.D. Jakes, the International Pastors and Leaders Conference. We are actually here for the leadership. You know how I be doing it all the time? It's funny that Bishop got up and did that. But what we're going to do is, guess what? Tell your friends, tell your family. We're going to actually bring you some of the conference, right? The things that you need to know that you actually can walk in your purpose. You know, so just relax, sit back and relax, and please enjoy. But always remember, we love you. This is Good Deeds, and I'm Dr. Renee Sunday. Just a question, in Atlanta specifically, there are a lot of kids, especially in the DeKalb County specifically, that, you know, they really don't have that hope. You look in their face, their hope is not there. And if you look at the material that they're being taught, they actually are not prepared, to be honest, for the standardized test. What's your views on that? I know that can go
on. I mean, the session I just finished dealt with the issue school choice to black choice. And one of the things that I have been advocating across the country is for us to be in control of our own educational institutions, which is one of the reasons why I support charter schools, because I'm not interested in waiting for somebody else to educate our children. Otherwise, you know, we've been waiting since slavery, since the Emancipation Proclamation, when it comes to the issue of education. And so, but it also requires us, whether we are biological parents, whether we are aunts and uncles, to also be aggressive in demanding that level of accountability. See, when you use the word accountability, most folks around here get scared because that means that you got to have some skin in the game. And so that, to me, I think is what was critically most important. And then when we were able to touch somebody, whether it's a young man or a young woman, and all of a sudden they realize I can do something. There's a brother, Barrington, who's a pilot. And he was working somewhere, and he met this guy, and he saw him in his suit, and he asked him how much money did he make. And he told him, and Barrington said, "What? I'm gonna be a pilot." He grows up, and he becomes the youngest person ever to fly around the world solo. And so now he's been educating and training and raising up other African American and Latino pilots as well. Again, that was a chance meeting that put him on the path to what he's doing right now. We got to have more of those meetings.
So what should we do as the people locally? What else can we do besides?
Well, I think first and foremost, if our kids are going to failing schools, we got to make it perfectly clear: either you fix this problem or shut the school down. Second of all, what it also requires for us is to launch our own schools. It's for us and for them to be high performing. Then for us to invest in those schools, because it's one thing to simply say, "Oh yeah, you're doing a great job," but if we don't put our money where our mouth is, well, then that's also part of the problem.
All right, thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I tell anybody who's African American, they need to be members of the National Association of Black Journalists. Nearly every job that I've had in my career has been a result of individuals who I met through NABJ. The second thing, though, for a lot of folks is to understand that you are not necessarily going to work where you're from or where you live. For me, it's always been you go where the job is. And so it's amazing to me, I meet lots of young folks, so they might be from Dallas. Well, I want to work here. First of all, Dallas is the #4 media market in the country. You don't have any experience. Why am I going to hire you when I can hire somebody who's been in the business 5-10 years, who's trying to get to a market this size? The third thing is establish a work ethic. It is amazing to me how many people say, I want to do what you do. No, do you want to do what I do in terms of on the air, or do you want to do what I do off air? So if you don't have a work ethic, then you're not going to be successful, whether it's in this industry or any other. That's what I would say.
Mm-hmm. And as far as Christian journalists, how difficult is it with all of the current events happening to really be true and keep that integrity that you desire?
Again, here's the issue here. There are some people who say I'm Christian, where they say my faith is a part of who I am. Others say it is the essence of who I am. But when it's a part of who you are, which means you can put it on the shelf and walk away, versus it's the essence of who I am. And so it's not difficult. You can always represent and bring your values and your perspective no matter where you are. The question is, do you have the intestinal fortitude to actually do it? And that's where a lot of people, I think, actually fail. And so it really isn't that hard. And when you talk about contemporary issues, what I keep saying, where I challenge pastors all the time, I ask them the question, if you're a pastor, are you partisan or are you prophetic? So it doesn't matter who you voted for or who you endorsed. If they're doing something that is biblically wrong, you should be speaking against that. And it doesn't matter if it's a D or an R.
Okay,
Cool.
thank you.
Cool.
What would you say are the most important things to take away from your session today?
Well, we did. I launched this initiative. School choice is the black choice, because we have this constant debate in this country over the issue of school choice, and it gets contentious whether you're talking about charter schools and neighborhood schools and traditional schools and vouchers. And for me, we don't have time to be engaged in some debate. I mean, our kids are the ones who are failing. They're the ones who are not performing up to standard. And so it's offering them a different perspective, though. And so what's interesting that a lot of people don't realize is when you are running your own charter school, you're just not running the school. You're in control of the curriculum. You're in control of who gets hired. You're in control of who gets the contracts. And so this issue is not just an education issue, it's also an economic issue. Because, again, we are controlling the destiny for our children in our community. And so I'm not going to sit here and whine and complain that if the neighborhood school is failing, I say, fine. Since y'all don't want to fix that, let's replace the neighborhood school with a high-performing charter school that we own and we control and we operate. And so that really was what the focus was. And so, this is something that my wife and I feel very important by. She has all degrees, she all certification in education. That's her focus. For me, I'm an education advocate. And so this is really the only issue where I step outside of my role as a journalist to become a public advocate on, because it matters so much to our future. Well, there have been a lot of folks who for a very long time have been pimping God. There are a lot of folks who have been using their collars, and there are a lot of people who have been providing their endorsements, and then individuals then are not doing what they promised to do once they got in. I challenge pastors all of the time. Again, are you going to be prophetic or are you going to be partisan? Are you going, so if you're sitting in the White House or the governor's mansion or the mayor's office or talking to a state rep or state senator or a county commissioner, are you challenging them even if you supported them? Because otherwise, all you have done, again, is pimp the congregation, utilize your credibility, and the people got nothing in return. And in fact, it's very interesting. So, Bishop Harry Jackson was one of the folks who was on the panel. And so you have Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who in his confirmation hearings promised, they were going to protect civil rights. And Bishop Jackson was one of the folks with some other preachers who endorsed confirming Jeff Sessions. And so I hit him on the issue of mass incarceration in terms of what he's done, repealing a lot of things that President Obama put in place. And Bishop Harry was on my TV One show, and he said, well, I don't agree with those things. And I said, okay, are you and those same preachers going to get a meeting with Sessions and say, we put our name on the line to get you confirmed, so how are you now turning your back on black folks? And so when the show was over, he said, you know what, we're going to do that. He said, I appreciate you pushing me on accountability. But that's the whole point. So I'm not interested in your endorsement. If you're going to endorse somebody, that's fine. But then you make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do when it comes to our community.
He reaches all people, but he especially has a unique authority to speak to the hearts of people from Baltimore to the Bahamas, from places in Africa, all around the world. So he's a major voice. And then also I believe that our segment is dealing with what it means to be a prophetic voice to culture. And one of the things that we've been missing in the black-led church is that since the civil rights movement, it's almost as though we've gotten social laryngitis. And we are not really able to speak from that authoritative place as the church. A lot of people claim to be prophetic, but it has no weight to it. So I think that's why it's important for me to be a part of this discussion at this time. We got to deal with the overcriminalization of the black community. It's got to be dealt with a united church, black, white, Hispanic, and Asian. Secondly, there have to be jobs in the hood. No jobs, no sense of destiny, no opportunity to rebuild people's lives and to touch other generations. Third and finally, I believe that education, when we have such disparate outcomes, if you're an African American or Hispanic kid and you get out of school, the dropout rate in high schools is crazy for African American males specifically. I think those three areas need a moral voice. They have to be prioritized. We can't wait any longer. I would like to say it was a free pulpit that ultimately abolished slavery. It was a free pulpit, and President Johnson created a separation of church and state kind of doctrine and laws because he was afraid of the power of the black church specifically. And if it hadn't been a black church, Martin Luther King Jr. never would have been the guy that overturned the money changers' tables and started us on a path of equality. So we need these things to come together. The problem is, how do we do it? There's intimidation. Even today, I'll say this quickly, I think African American ministers are more bold than white leaders in terms of speaking out on issues in the culture, but we really don't have a unified voice. And that's one of the things we'll talk about today. We have great diversity on the panel, and we have diversity of political thought. But I want to sound like Rodney King. Remember that famous quote? Can't we all just get along?
Right.
I think that would be really powerful if we could unify. Because at 12 to 13% of the population, blacks are losing their ability to influence the culture. So you're going to have black and brown and a remnant from the white community speaking around a concerted, kind of harmonious understanding of the scriptures.
I know you're the founder of the Reconciled Church.
Yes.
How's that coming along?
It's coming along well. We've had a bunch of national meetings and regional meetings. Our next step is to begin to create some social media and books around the topic, because what I believe is that you're in a place, Potter's House, that is a model for a lot of things positive concerning returning citizens. So if that's one of the top three areas I talked about we need to address as a culture, they've already got an answer. Why would we have to reinvent the wheel? We need more people to replicate what the Potter House is doing. And then there are places like Miles McPherson, pastor church in San Diego, who gives 100,000 community hours away to the city. Goes to the mayor, says, what do you need done? And then he mobilizes a team that does $8 to $10 million annually of work in their city. And I could go on and on talking about models that need to be multiplied and made multiracial.
Thank you so much.
You're very
God
welcome.
bless.
Thank you.
Good deeds.
Yes.
Hi, Good Deeds from Atlanta.
Hello.
The question I want to ask is, we thank you so much for being on the advisory board for President Trump, but we want to
you.
ask, what can we do at the local level, meaning the communities in our churches, that we can actually help make this become a more diverse in our agreements of the things we need to do in life?
Well, I think it's going to be incumbent upon the administration to build some bridges to us and mobilize us. Rebuilding, in the room here was a former faith-based initiative guy from Mr. Obama, and he knows better than I the potential that government has to bring together or have partnerships with local ministries. I think that strategy has got to come from the administration, meaning we're doing what we're doing in the streets. And in places like Atlanta, you've got some great ministries. However, what would that look like if you had some government funding? What would it look like if there were ways that we could partner with business and government and the church? And that's one of the passions of our heart.
Yes, just to follow that up, what can we do in our homes as parents, as siblings, how we can actually help the millennials and the young people that's coming up?
Well, millennials have only 4% of them have a biblical worldview, studies are telling us now. So I think what we have to do is, if I'm looking at race as a major problem, poverty is a major problem, there's a personal conscience and personal responsibility dimension. And then I believe there's structural challenges that we face within the culture. In other words, if you're a poor black kid in certain parts of Atlanta, you start out 3 steps behind. Some of the roadblocks for kids like that could be alleviated by structural change. So in the home, I've got to start teaching, get these kids saved, start teaching the Bible. I got to teach them about, big word for you, compound name of God, Jehovah Gamola, the God of recompenses. And what that means is that nobody can disrespect you if you're a believer and judge you, condemn you, torture you, push you out without God being aware of it. And our God is willing to take action and reverse injustices. I think that kind of Christianity needs to be taught. I'm not talking about violence physically. I'm talking about spiritual violence. In other words, faith that says, you can't keep me down or keep me out of God's purpose because I'm a God-called, blood-washed child of God. I'm not so sure we are evangelizing young black people and Hispanic people with that kind of tenacity and intensity. And I can do that in my home, and then, real quick, teach your children how to read, write, and do arithmetic. That's not exactly right. I'm being silly. It's all right.
But thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. To attend or get materials from these workshops and the messages. I remember a message, I would think it was last year, it was preached by John Hagee about being a leader and how it really put into focus many things for me. So I don't think you'll find a better place that has a combination of natural, strategic focuses, how you can use your, I say natural or strategic management skills, along with deeply spiritual understandings of what it means to be a man or woman of God. So I think in this season, in this nation and the world, this is a place to be if you're serious about being a leader. Dialogue and awakening intellectually, I think, is a beginning step of change. So if we don't talk it out and get some perspectives, I don't think we're going to rise and accomplish what we need to accomplish. Right now, I think the race problem in America, I've said it's going to shock a lot of people, is solvable in short and intermediate and long-term way in America because of her Christian foundation. I also believe that generational poverty, we understand that Jesus said, the poor you'll have with you always, and that comes even from the Old Testament. But it doesn't mean that in a place like America, we have to have so many people falling behind. And so I believe that as we talk, as we expose folks from different backgrounds, I think the lights are going to come on, and we're going to point, I know my cohorts on the panel I'm on are going to point the way to models and to examples of people who are doing amazing things that can be duplicated.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
At the forefront. I'm a student of civil rights history, spent a lot of time with folks like Joe Lowry and C.T. Vivian, have immersed myself in the life of the greats like Fannie Lou Hamer and so forth. And when you look at what they wrote and what they say, they will tell you that it was the distinct minority of people of faith, including black folks, including pastors, that were at the forefront of these prophetic movements. In fact, there were many more standing in the way. Fannie Lou Hamer said if she could just get pastors in Mississippi out of her way, she could do so much more. And so I think that's the tension that we have to face now, is that sometimes the faith community can be at the forefront of movements for change, but sometimes they can be co-opted by the same systems that are blocking change anyway. We've got to figure out which side we're going to be on.
Bishop Jackson, where is the church when it comes to this moment in time when we're seeing these budget pacts, the proposal for major budget cuts, when it swings towards the least of these?
Well, I want to go back to something that Joshua said, it does apply. I believe there are levels of prophetic influence the church can have in a nation. What he has been doing for many years is being like a prophet, as David has 2 prophets he really listened to perennially, to the man making the most major impact in our nation. So I think we're in Joel chapter 3 in the Old Testament.
And tell us.
And Joel chapter 3 is a passage in which God calls out the men of war. And there's conflict but the conflict is God ordained. And I believe that what we're starting to see are a lot of inequities in the system. It's not just the left or the right, it's both and I think God, in His mercy, is exposing things that we have to deal with. And I think all of us who are aware, if we don't deal with race problems in America, something will burn up. If we don't, something will burn up. Yeah, and if we don't deal with the community I was raised in, Cincinnati, Ohio, a place called Avondale, you know, that place is decimated with poverty. And if we don't deal with how we treat poverty or people below the spectrum, given the fact we're the richest nation in the world, I believe we're going to have to answer to God. So I believe the church has an opportunity, but I'm concerned that she's still in this place, as he mentioned before so eloquently, that we're reticent and we're not standing up.
When you see a Bishop T.D. Jakes, you can't do that overnight. That didn't happen last night. Trust me, what we see and what we hear from him today is not because I don't care if it was the Pope himself that laid hands on him. It didn't happen last night. There are certain things that only happen over time, and there is always a process. There's always a gap. There's always a gap. And I believe that God brought all of us here to be able to stretch us, because there's a gap. There's a gap, and there's a gap to be minded. You have to mind the gap. You have to mind the gap. There's always a gap, something that separates where we are trying to go from the place where we are, because it's as though we're on a platform and we're trying to step over into the thing that is going to become our transportation. It would take us a much longer time if we just said, no, I'm not going to get on that. That looks too dangerous. I don't trust this. This is automation, and I know how to deal with this, but I don't know how to do that. And I didn't build that, so I don't trust that. But I was standing on a platform, and it simply said, mind the gap. I've seen people get stuff stuck in the gap. And see, wherever there's a shift, wherever there's a shifting, our folks on the Olympics sometimes have lost in the relay races because they didn't pass the baton well. There was a faultiness in the process of being able to transfer what was given to them. Right. And so there was a problem. There was a problem in the passing of it, in the shifting. And see, we're in a divine shift prophetically as a church. This is not just a denomination. This is the church. Our world is in transition. Ideologies are in transition. Concepts, tradition is in transition now. We're dealing with sociological change, technological change, economic change, environmental change, political change, wide varieties of change on every level of life. And it's forcing us to come. And let me just say this. There's such a huge difference between baby boomers. I'm a baby boomer. We were the biggest generation in history until the millennials showed up. And now they are the biggest generation in U.S. history. Over 92 million of them, strong in America. And let me just say this to you. 80% of the community where our churches are located are unchurched. What are we going to do to reach them? And I want to challenge every baby boomer to get to know 5 millennials. 5 millennials, get to know 5 millennials, and then write down a note to yourself 3 things that you appreciate about them. And here's the reason that I simply say 3 things that you appreciate about them. It is because it's very difficult to change anything that you do not value. If you don't value a culture, you have no power to change it. Because God so loved the world, He valued, He gave up everything that He had to come after what He wanted. He valued us before He changed us. You cannot change what you don't value. If you don't value your children, you cannot change them. I've got 5 millennial children. And so they are not our future, they are our present. They're really our present, and we've got a lot of work to do. We got a lot of work to do because it's hard to change whatever you don't value. And so we've got to be able to value some stuff. And then when you leave this place, some of you are going to have to take inventory of the people that you call friends. That is so interesting. Be careful about who you call your friends. Some of you have too many of them. May I say this to you? I would rather have 4 friends that are quarters than 100 that are pennies. The question is not how many, it's what kind. It's what kind. It's not how many. Please, I hope that you're not measuring your worth by who follows you on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. It's not about how many, it's about what kind. What kind? What kind? What kind? It is so interesting, it's so interesting that I don't believe in cheap anointings. Nobody can really inherit your anointing. It doesn't matter whose shoes you wear. It matters the steps that you take that determine your destiny. It's not about the shoes, it's about the steps. My daddy was a country boy from the country. I mean, when he go out on the golf course, he pull his shoes off and walk around barefoot. Because it's not about the shoes you wear. It's about the steps that you take. And he was willing to be a country boy on city courses and walk around barefooted. He was resolved in his own mind, I'm gonna do me. It is amazing how money can free you to be me. And not only when you get it, but when you have it in here.
Hi, you guys. This is Good Deeds, and I'm Dr. Renee Sunday. I know you've had an awesome, fabulous. You have totally enjoyed yourself. The key is transformation, right? Make that shift, make a change in your life because we need you in your purpose. I cannot be in my purpose unless you're in your purpose. So we're going to actually do this thing together, right? The thing is, always remember that God loves you. You know, make sure you click on Bishop T.D. Jakes' website. You know, go check it out. Go to their social media and go to ours too, Good Deeds TV and Dr. Renee Sunday. You know how to get in contact with us. Please go to our website, www.reneesunday.com. Always remember, you do have a calling. You do have a purpose. When you were born, you have a purpose that you're here right now. Do the 3 things I always say. You got to believe, you got to trust, and you got to walk it out. You just got to shift, just like Bishop said. We got to shift so we could actually be in our purpose, because guess what? You're already there. You just got to keep moving, you know, because you can't quit. Quitting is not an option. You know, we love you, love you, love you. This is Good Deeds, and I'm Dr. Renee Sunday.